This video is sponsored by World Anvil. I listen to the Eldritch Lorecast, the podcast run by Ghostfire Gaming. If you don't listen to it, you should. It's great. It's on YouTube. They're friends of the show. Hi, folks. But I'm flashing back, way back to an episode that aired in March of this year. Why am I talking about it so much later? Because we're going to talk a lot about Santa, and the SEO for the term Santa Claus is pretty good right now, probably. In episode 24 of the podcast, one of the hosts, James Hake, discussed his work on the Critical Role adventure book, Call of the Netherdeep. Is that why I was holding that book in the crossover video I did on the Ghostfire Gaming channel? Was I teasing this video more than a month ago? Sure, let's say yes. Anyway, in that episode, another host and D&D YouTuber, Dael Kingsmill, asked James which part of the adventure would appeal most to each of them. Basically, as their friend, pitched them something about the adventure that would make each of them really excited to play it. And so he did. He went through each host and pitched them something about the adventure that they would probably really enjoy. And as he did so, Dael compared him to Father Christmas in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, showing up in Narnia with gifts for each of them. And it occurred to me, that's what you're always doing as a dungeon master. As a DM, I have lots of stories and ideas and things that I want to try. On this channel alone, I've mentioned wanting to run a game where the party just hunts monsters for bounties, or running another West Marches game, or a game where encumbrance and rations mattered. Honestly, those are all potentially compatible ideas, but I have a lot of other types of campaigns that I'd also love to run. I'd love to tell a time travel story. I've had an idea for how to do that in D&D for a while. I've been catching up on Matt Colville's Dusk campaign, and I'm starting to get that itch for a heroic fantasy adventure, like the kind I used to run and play in 4th edition. And of course, there are countless published D&D adventures from many different publishers that I would love to run for friends. Real quick, if anybody's figured out how to clone people, right here, hit me up. I would multiplicity myself tomorrow if I could. But of course, that's not really what I want. If that was the most important thing to me, I'd have already done it by now. At one point, I was running 3 ongoing campaigns at once, and for a lot of them, I was writing new material for every session. Even the pre-written adventures were being heavily altered. So why haven't I gotten around to some of these adventures I've thought about running for literally years? Because I don't think that's my job as a dungeon master. That's not what I think being a DM should be. I don't believe it should be a dictatorship, where one person makes all the decisions without factoring in what anybody else wants. But I am open to one person making all the decisions while factoring in what everybody else wants. You are Santa Claus for your D&D players. And while, yes, kids will usually write Santa a Christmas list, and you can also ask your players for a wish list. I made a whole video about that last week. That's actually not what I'm talking about today. Or, I guess it is, but that's just one small part of it, one possible approach you can take to becoming Santa Claus for your players. Because from my perspective, running a D&D campaign is basically a gift that you give your friends. That's part of why I don't personally care for using the term Forever DM. You don't have to be a dungeon master if you don't want to. I can totally understand feeling frustrated if the only chance you have to play D&D is as a DM, and if you don't step up and do it, you know your group won't end up playing at all. That's totally fair, and that's totally valid. But hopefully, you also love what you're doing. And hopefully, you're not doing it just because you want to tell a specific story, but because you know your players will also enjoy it. Or at least, you hope your players will enjoy it. You can't always know for sure. And honestly, I think that a lot of the pressure DMs feel when they're running a game is actually really similar to the stress you feel when you give someone a gift. If they didn't specifically ask for it, as in if they didn't pick it out and put it on a wish list for you, are you sure they're going to like it? It's a risk we take several times every year. For birthdays and Christmases, and especially anniversaries, you're expected to get someone a gift, and they won't always give you a list to choose from. If you're my age, you're also starting to buy a lot of wedding gifts, but that doesn't count because you should always pick a wedding gift from the registry. It's actually unacceptable to get them something that isn't on the list. I mean, you can get them something nice and sweet and heartfelt too. That's fine, and that's a lovely gesture. But they spent hours putting together that registry, and it is there for a reason. Sorry, Aunt Alice, we totally love the homemade flower pot we have nowhere to put and that doesn't go with our aesthetic at all. Kinda would have preferred the air fryer. But just like Tim Allen trying to revive his career after his sexist sitcom failed, let's get back to Santa Claus. Because Santa doesn't just give kids the things they ask for. Sometimes, Santa gives the kids something he knows they will love, even if the kid didn't know they wanted it. Similarly, when we're creating adventures, crafting encounters and NPCs and loot, painting minis and writing up handouts, we hopefully put all of that care into these gifts because we know our players will love it. That feeling when someone opens their Christmas gift, which was chosen or created with love and sincerity, is such a beautiful moment. It's why Christmas is my favorite holiday. I just love when people get gifts that they love. But once I realized that being a DM is like being Santa Claus for your players, I realized I get that same feeling whenever I produce something in D&D that I spent a lot of time on because I knew my players would love it. I want to talk about one of the handouts you see on my wall, the wanted poster. This is a real prop from one of my D&D games, a group called the Valkyries. The characters had gone into town after a long adventure in the forest, and they went to the bounty board to look for work. And I pulled out a real corkboard covered in pieces of parchment paper, some large, some small. Some were ads for businesses, some were jobs that a mercenary could take, and some were the equivalent of personal ads. And peppered throughout were clues that were meant to set up other plot points for the campaign, for the future of where the adventures were going to go. But on that board, partially obscured by other papers that they had to push aside to see it, they found this wanted poster. And for the first time ever, they got to see art of their characters, art that I had drawn based on their descriptions. And the players were blown away. They were so happy, so excited, so delighted. They started pointing at their characters and highlighting details. I can't believe your hair looks just like you've described. This actually looks like your face. Look, it's your weapon. That pose captures your character perfectly. Of course, the fighter immediately pointed it and asked, wait, why is there a bounty of us? What did we do? And it took maybe 5 or 10 minutes for the other players to calm down enough to realize, wait, yeah, why is there a bounty on our heads? What did we do wrong? This bounty was posted by the last person who hired us. We did our job, so what's going on? I spent a lot of time on this poster, and I was so proud of the finished product. And for quite a while during the game, I had this corkboard at my side, the pages facing the wall, waiting for the moment that they would reach the bounty board. And then I could reveal the corkboard. And the moment when it happened was even better than I could have imagined. If I'd asked them for a wish list of moments for a D&D campaign, that probably wouldn't have been on it. Although maybe 1 or 2 of them would have wanted to see art of their character. That seems reasonable, and these days it's more and more common for D&D players to commission art of their character or of their party. But that moment was so spectacular because I had created something for them, a gift that they wouldn't have gotten for themselves. And seeing their smiles, it was like Christmas. Of course, in some stories, Santa doesn't just bring the kids something they will love but wouldn't have thought to ask for. Santa gives the kid something they need. To go back to that Father Christmas example from Chronicles of Narnia again, none of those kids asked for medieval weapons on their Christmas list. That would be kind of a red flag. But jolly old St. Nick shows up and gives them what they need. I think that's something we also do as dungeon masters. Have you ever made sure your party had access to silver weapons, or the means to make silver weapons, somewhere in the town that is being menaced by a werewolf? Have you ever stashed a healing potion in a chest on the dungeon level just before they reach the big bad? These are just some of the ways we give our players something they need. Have you ever had an NPC from someone's backstory get kidnapped by the big bad, who happens to have stashed them in the dungeon you had already prepared? What about when the NPC from someone's backstory turns out to be the big bad? Whenever you use your players' backstories against them, you're likely not giving them something they want, unless they're a sick freak like me who creates characters designed to suffer. But you are giving them something they need. It might come in the form of a reason to be invested in the story, or a catharsis that their character sorely needs in order to complete their character arc. Or maybe just an acknowledgement that, yes, they did come up with an awesome backstory, which you are now validating by making those characters from their past very important to the events of your game. Sometimes putting your characters through misery can be exactly what they need when it's tailored to them in such a way to reward their choices, or give them the experience they're looking for. But there's one more thing Santa Claus offers kids, and it's something we also offer our players: the opportunity to believe in something. Nearly every modern Santa Claus story is about kids believing in Santa, whether or not there's any evidence, whether or not it makes any sense. If you're curious, the best version of this is in Elf, and I will be taking no questions at this time. Except for this next question, which I'm taking from myself. What does this part have to do with D&D? Most dungeon masters are not magical elves who live in the North Pole and travel around the world delivering millions of gifts in a single night. What are we asking our players to believe in? Well, we're asking our players to believe in the D&D worlds we create. We're asking them to believe that their actions have consequences, that the things that happen in the game actually matter. That may seem obvious, but that's the reason so many people have strong opinions about joke characters with goofy names, because we worry that it means these players aren't taking the game seriously. But at its core, we are asking our players to accept something that's even more unlikely than the idea that a Greek bishop who moonlights as a Coca-Cola mascot can visit the home of every child in the world and give them a gift as long as they celebrate Christmas. We're asking them to believe that a group of people sitting around a table or on a Discord video call are actually a team of adventurers in a magical fantasy world fighting monsters and saving the land from evil. And just like in any Santa Claus story, that belief is an incredibly powerful thing, and it should be nurtured and encouraged. If your players can buy into that belief, then perhaps they can suspend their disbelief long enough for you to give them the greatest gifts of all. Violence. Okay, maybe that's just true about D&D since it is such a combat-heavy game, but surely we wouldn't expect Santa Claus to handle the kind of extended action sequences that D&D is famous for.
Time for some season's beatings.
Boss, what if he really is the real?
There's no such thing as Santa.
I believe in you, Santa.
God, it's so awesome. Violent Night looks so awesome. I'm probably seeing that movie right now when you're watching this. You could be watching this in June 2025, and I'll probably be watching Violent Night. It's Sheriff Hopper as Santa Claus doing a Die Hard. Truly, the best Christmas gift we could possibly receive. And if you want to give your players the greatest gift of all by running games for them, it sure would be nice to be able to keep track of all of your notes in one convenient place, which you can do by signing up for today's sponsor, World Anvil. They have a terrific Chronicles feature, which you can use to link your timeline to your maps. It's a terrific way to be able to keep a record of as many timelines as you like. You can track your players' actions and your villains' actions on different timelines, navigate around the continent with ease, and add in the world's holidays hyperlinked to an article of all the various local villages' traditions and beliefs. Visit worldanvil.com and use the promo code SUPERGEEK to save 40% off of any annual membership. Thank you so much to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching. I'd love to know if this video got you to think about DMing from a different perspective, whether you agree with me or not. So let me know in the comments below. If you want to support the channel, there are a few ways you can do that. You can subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about new videos as soon as they come out. You can support me on Patreon. Any dollar amount really helps the channel. You can join my Discord and be a part of a cool community talking about D&D and actual play and giving each other advice. It's really lovely. And you can sign up for my newsletter and get updates about what I've got going on. Until next time, play fair and have fun. Also, I was just joking. I don't have an Aunt Alice, and nobody gave us a flower pot for our wedding. If you've watched this all the way to the end, I'll tell you the truth. It was an art piece, and it is lovely. Still would have preferred the air fryer.